Hello, this is Mr. Praveen Kumar. Welcome to .NET C Sharp training. So here is the module 1 and session 1 for today. So in this particular module 1, we'll try to introduce .NET Core, and we'll also go through the language fundamentals. So before going to the C Sharp concept directly, like we need to know some of the basics concepts on the .NET Core, like what is about .NET Core is, what are the .NET Core components we have. So we'll go to the fundamentals of .NET Framework and .NET Core in this particular session. So we'll get started with .NET from .NET Framework to .NET Core. So this particular session, there is many terminologies in terms of .NET Framework, in .NET Core. C Sharp, we call it as C Sharp.NET and VB.NET. There are many terminologies in this particular platform, right? So we'll try to understand, we'll get to the point like what is each and every terminology means, and we'll get familiar with the components of .NET Core, okay? So here are the agenda items for this particular session. Like we will know what are the brief earlier history of Microsoft, like how did this particular technology got started. And later we'll introduce to the .NET framework and introducing to the .NET Core, and we'll demo some of the World programs in terms of writing these particular programs, basic programs in terms of this both the frameworks, and we try to identify these particular differences. So we'll highlight some of the few differences in terms of the .NET Core and .NET framework as well. Okay, let's get started. So early brief history, like this particular Microsoft, like was founded by founded by Bill Gates in 1975, along with Paul Allen. Okay, so the earlier technologies, like we did not have much into the web applications, like they were into the Windows application, which is nothing but the Visual Basics, and this particular Visual Basic was very limited, and we did not have much explorer on that particular point of time in 1975. Okay, so we'll see what is. Let me connect to my tab and explain you much in details about this particular brief history as well. Okay. Yeah. Let I call this particular thing as the .NET. Okay, and .NET history, like we can call it as journey. It's a .NET journey. Let's see what we have in terms of this .NET journey. Okay, Microsoft early technologies. So Microsoft it is got founded in 1970s. Okay, and they have only Visual Basic for GUI applications, and for Windows, like they have only Visual Basic and Visual C++. Okay, Visual Basic and Visual C++. So this was to some extent it worked fine. So they were used for this particular thing for Windows applications and for programming, but this particular thing was structural programming. They are not objective oriented, these are structural programming. Okay, and for web related, like these are like for the Windows. So this worked for with respect to the Windows. So Visual Basic is for the Windows. For working with the web applications, they have AXP, Active Server Pages. Okay, so this worked with respect to the web applications. Okay, and for communication with respect to the other objects, like in terms of communicating with respect to the other objects, they have COM and DCOM. Okay, COM and DCOM. COM and DCOM is nothing but the component object model and dynamic component object model. It is very important for you to understand all this terminology when we are trying to introduce the C Sharp. Okay, this terminology is for the beginners, and we need to know how this particular earlier Microsoft got started, and what are these importance, and how it got started with respect to the .NET Framework and .NET Core. Okay, so get to this particular point of time, like get into this particular terminology. Okay, object oriented model, COM and DCOM. Okay, and this is for distributed systems. Like in terms of the distributed systems is nothing but I'm just like an API. Like when I wanted to object to object communication, so I use COM. They used COM and DCOM. Okay, and the drawback of this like is like they have some related issues, like in terms of use DLL health. They have some Windows registry issues and all. Okay, but basic, like this was the earlier structure they have used, and they do not have no unified framework. So no unified framework is nothing but like, for example, if I wanted to communicate to the database, so they do not have a component directly. They have ADO, which is nothing but the ActiveX data objects. Like, so they need to separately download that one. They doesn't have a unified framework. When you install Visual Studio or when you install a certain framework, everything that comes as a package. So they for each and every component, if we wanted to work, they have to install it directly. For example, if they wanted to work with the .NET, ADO.NET, so they have to install the ADO components, and they wanted to work with some of the, say, let's say system.io. Like if I wanted to save some file to the operating system or the external disk and all, so they have to install this particular system.io, which created something called as DLL, and each and every component has to be registered under the Windows registries. So all these particular things, were issues with respect to the earlier introduction to this particular earlier technologies of Microsoft. So no proper unified framework. Okay, example that I can give is ADO, ActiveX data objects. Each particular, whichever the thing they are working, they have to install it and all this. Okay, so in this particular point of era of this particular thing, they were more developers in terms of C++. C++ were very popular at that particular point of time. So there was a requirement for Microsoft to make, there were more developers in terms of C++, and they were developers in terms of Visual Basic, and they were the Java developers, and they were J Sharp developers. So taking into consideration with respect to these particular issues in the no unified framework of earlier technologies, so and the issues concerned with respect to the own Microsoft issues in terms of all these particular no unified framework, so they wanted to make all the developers C++ developers into one particular platform, and they wanted to develop a unified framework, and they came out with this particular .NET framework. Okay, so the main motto of this particular .NET framework, I'm going to take here. I'm going to draw a line here. Okay, I'm just copying this particular thing, that .NET framework. Okay, so based on the developer, like each and every, like the main motto of this particular emerging of .NET framework is to make different developers under one platform. So they wanted to bring one particular platform. So they for Visual Basic and for C++ developer, everything, like they wanted to bring one particular platform, and they wanted to have a unified framework. So they break down with they came up with in 2022. Sorry, in 202. Okay, 2002, they came out with the unified framework, unified .NET framework. So this Visual Basic, whichever the programmers of Visual Basic, they have migrated in terms of the VB.NET. So they moved to Visual Basic to Visual Basic to Visual Basic.NET, and VC++ to VB.NET, C#.NET. Okay. See how this particular structural programming. Now this is not structural programming, this is objective oriented programming. Okay, so Visual Basic has been turned to VB.NET, and Visual C Sharp C++ has been turned to C#.NET. Okay, so this is nothing but the objective oriented. This is very powerful in breakdown in terms of the .NET framework. So all the developers were with respect to with this C#.NET is more compatible with C and C++, right? So who are learning, who are background with respect to the C++ and having some syntax knowledge in terms of some knowledge on the C++ is more advantageous with respect to the C#.NET. So now that they have migrated, they have introduced VB.NET and C Sharp in our application, which is object oriented, and this particular AXP has changed to the ASP.NET. Okay, the ASP.NET was more powerful, like in terms of the rapid application development. They have some toolboxes and they all the controls in the toolbox, and then they can drag the grid views or list view or whichever thing they wanted to develop, and it is was called as the rapid application development. Okay, RAD, which is nothing but the rapid application development. Okay, now com and decom was like, has I've said, like some they had some issues, then now that has been developed as web services and WCF services. So whatever they were com issues, like in terms of the DLL hell and all the issues, they were or tried to they overcome as well. So they were very successful in terms of having a unified framework. Okay, where there was a successful framework. So let me tell you about something about this particular framework. Like, okay, so I'm going to brief you on the components of this particular .NET framework, like high overview. Like if you can see, I have the PPT for this one as well. So now that now I hope you understand some brief introduction with respect to the earlier Microsoft technologies they have used. Now that we have came into the .NET 2002 era, from 1970s to 2002 era. So now that we are here in terms of the .NET framework, and .NET framework was very popular because they have the unified framework, doesn't need to install each and every component. Once you install Visual Studio, everything like the SDK .NET framework, .NET software development kit, so of the .NET framework, then you will get everything components. Okay, so I can directly work with the ADO.NET, I can directly with the Windows web. I have the framework class libraries which are applicable to each and every different platforms. Okay, so I can use the common language runtime that I can run these particular applications, Windows applications, web applications, and I have the common shared framework class libraries which can be used across Windows and web applications as well. For example, if I'm trying to connect from Windows applications to Windows application to database, or ASP.NET applications, web applications to database, so I can use the ADO.NET components over here. So that was very popular, and I can use various other frameworks like LinkQ, Entity Framework, Parallel queues, and etc. So this particular framework, base class like libraries was very popular. So we'll try to understand this particular .NET framework in terms of our writings as well. Okay, so let get into this particular framework components. Okay, I call this as the .NET framework components. Okay, so I have less space here. Okay, I will try to write here. Okay, Windows application, web application. Okay, something like ADO.NET. I have base class libraries. I have CLR. CLR was very popular, and it has brought all the developers in one particular platform. Okay, so I'm going to explain that in detail as well. Okay, so CLR has something called as JIT compiler. So so like whatever the code that we write, like either in C Sharp, VB.NET, F or J Sharp. Okay, this particular compiler CLR is going to convert that into the MSIL code. So in whichever the language you write, for example, you may write in C Sharp int A, or in dim, like in VB.NET dim A as integer. So it is going to convert with respect to the MSIL code, okay, which is common language specification, common type systems. So it is going to convert this into system dot into 32. Okay, so that whichever the whatever the languages you have written, so whichever the languages that you have written, either in C Sharp or VB.NET or Offshore or J Sharp, in whichever the syntax that you have used in different languages, it is going to convert with respect to that particular relevant MSIL code, which is understandable and which is given to the CLR. Okay, and CLR is going to run this particular machine language code. Okay, I have less space here. I am not sure if you get it this one right. This is the, I'm going to explain it once again. Okay, this is the CLR execution model. Okay, CLR execution model. Okay, okay, I'm going to explain that in the PPT now. Okay, if you can see this particular PPT, so see whatever the code that we write, either in C Sharp, F Sharp, or Visual Basic, or VB.NET, or whatever, it is not directly understood by the processor. Processor only understand the machine language code. So what basically does is, like, each and every language has the independent compiler, right? So that compiler will convert that into the MSIL code. Okay, so the MSIL code will be given to this particular CLR, and the CLR will be running this particular, generating zeros, will generate zeros and ones, which is machine language understandable language code, and that particular code will be executed by the CLR. Okay, so I hope you understand this particular execution flow, like CLR execution model. Okay, so how it will get source code to the compiler, and compiler to the MSIL code, and the CLR getting to converted to the machine language code, and it is finally executed by the CPU. Okay, once you do the demo, you'll get more into understanding. So now that it was very popular, this particular framework was very popular. Let me connect to my again. Yeah. So now that this particular .NET framework was very popular, and but there was some, like, very there was some post back issues, like, has like the, since this particular ASP.NET have rapid application development, so they have the capability of dragging and dropping with respect to the controls, and but each and every control, when there is a action that has been performed, so it goes and hits to the server, and the post packs happens, and there was very burden in this particular point of time, like there were other technologies like jQuery. They were at that particular point of time, in they were more driving through with respect to the client side technologies. Okay, like client side technologies, jQuery, like in jQuery we have the all the server side controls that has been developed in the particular ASP.NET has been developed with respect to the jQuery components as well. So which are the client side controls instead of server side controls, like grid view in ASP.NET. So we have jQuery grids, like all these particular client side controls were executed at the client side. So there were more demand with respect to the client side technologies like jQuery, and we wanted some of the code to be developed which are cloud friendly. So there was First demand was with respect to the client side technology, and second demand was with respect to the cloud friendly, and third one was with respect to the artificial intelligence and machine learning. I would also like IoT. So Internet of Things. So once I will show you this particular components. So in .NET Core. So now that we are in .NET Core, okay. Now that we are trying to understand what is the unified development platform in terms of the .NET Core. So earlier, like when you go with the .NET framework, we have this particular way of having shared assemblies with respect to the Windows forms and the web forms, right? So in this particular .NET framework and .NET in this particular .NET Core, we have the base class shared libraries not just to the Windows or web, but with respect to the other platforms. See, here we have this particular base class libraries, all the compilers, the languages which can be used in different platforms, like in the cloud, in the Blazor, in the desktop, like in terms of the .NET MAUI, which is that rich UIs, and for mobile, and like for Xamarin and IoT, artificial intelligence, and everything. Like this particular base class libraries was very popular. For .NET Core base class libraries was very popular, and it is used in different platforms. Okay, I hope you get it. I will get into my writings again. Okay, now that there is a demand for this particular client level, and which should we wanted something with respect to these particular cloud friendly and machine learning and IoT friendly as well. So that for that reason, we came to .NET Core. Okay, and .NET Core was introduced in 2016. Okay, and it is we have the same like the C# .NET and VB.NET with new features. So we have async and await, and in terms of the parallel execution, parallel task libraries and all. So this particular thing, C# was more powerful with respect to .NET Core. Okay. Now that ASP.NET has turned to ASP.NET Core. Okay. Now web services and WCF service has been replaced with web API and REST APIs. Okay, so this is the way, like the journey that started from these particular things, like that ASP.NET has been replaced with ASP.NET Core, and ASP.NET and web services and WCF services with web APIs and REST APIs. Okay, so now this particular .NET Core components has been like very let's like let in terms of the .NET components, .NET Core components. So similarly, like in like base class libraries, we call it as core FX. Core FX is core framework class libraries, and we have something called as core CLR. Okay, so Windows, Web, and Entity Framework, and these particular components can be used in the cloud, IoT, and machine learning and artificial intelligence. Here is the rough figure of the .NET Core components. Okay, so I hope you get this particular points in detail. Okay, so here if you can see in this particular thing, so whatever the .NET Core libraries, this particular is shared across all the platforms. Okay, if you can see this one, here is the ecosystem. It has the complete ecosystem in terms of whatever the code that we write. We can have the NuGet packages, we can host that into, we can have this particular GitHub, and we have some tools like Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio for Mac, and common language interface. We'll get each and every components of this particular in the next session, but for now we have to understand for now how the journey got started in terms of the the early Microsoft .NET technology, .NET Framework, and .NET Core. Okay, and you understand the core components in top the .NET Framework components and .NET Core components. Okay. Now let get into the demo. Let me connect to my Visual Studio. In this particular demo, what I do is like I'm going to show how this particular CLR I'm going to write two Hello World programs in .NET Framework and in .NET Core, and I'm going to run that particular programs and show you the demo. Okay. Let me create a project in Visual Studio. I'm going to create a console application. Okay. See here I have the console application. Okay. If you wanted, like if you can see all the list of all the projects, like he have all the bunch of projects. Okay. For now, I'm going to create a console application. So I have two options here. I have option to create this console application in the .NET Core, and I have the options to create this particular console application in the .NET Framework. So we'll create two projects, one in the .NET Framework and one in the .NET Core, and we'll execute this particular program using CLR, and we'll execute this particular program in the Core CLR using the Core CLR. So the CLR uses Microsoft Core library. Here it uses system.microsoft Core library. So this will try to run this particular program under nothing but we'll run this particular program under the CLR. We'll run this particular program under the Core CLR. Okay. And this I said like this particular whatever the languages that we write will the compiler will convert and to the MSL code, right? And we'll also see this particular CLR execution process as well. Okay, I hope you are getting these particular points. So first I'm going to try this particular framework. Okay, I'm going to say hello world framework. I'm choosing my folder path. Okay, I'm choosing .NET Framework 4.8. So create this particular project under .NET Framework 4.8. 4.8 is the latest framework with respect to the .NET Framework. Okay, please get to our understanding like we are doing a sample program with respect to the .NET Framework, not to the .NET Core. We'll come to the .NET Core later. So for now, we understand like this particular there is a compiler, C# compiler, VB compiler, and each and every languages that we have individual compilers. Okay, so I'm going to write console dot write line hello world using Microsoft .NET framework. Okay, console dot read line. Okay. Before building this, I can build this directly. When I build this particular thing, it identifies the compiler CSC compiler will come to existence and will generate the MSL code. So when I build this, so I open this. So if I can see bin debug, I do not have nothing. So when I build this, the CSI compiler will come to existence and create all the MSIL code for me. This is the MSIL code. MSIL code is nothing but intermediate language code, Microsoft intermediate language code that could be an exe or DLL file. So here it is the your exe here is the MSIL code, which is convert again. It is converted back to the machine language code by the CLR. Now here is the compiler. What we have done once we build this, the compiler will convert this into the MSIL code. I will do that manually so that you understand much in a better way. So I'm removing these two things. Okay. So if you can see, I have the program.cs class file here. I have the c.cs project file over here. So what I'm trying to do, I will go and to the command Visual command prompt. I have the Visual Studio command prompt. I'm opening this Visual Studio command prompt. Okay. I'm going to nothing but instead of doing it running it directly, I'm using the command line interface. Okay. I'm using the command lines to show you how this works actually. Okay. First I'm going to change the directory. I'm just navigating to this particular folder. Okay. Let's see what we have in this particular folder. So first I do have the program.cs class file, and I wanted this particular program.cs class file to convert this to the MSIL code. So okay, what I'll do is csc C# compiler program.cs. First I'm giving this particular program.cs class file to the compiler. C# compiler. csc.exe is one of the compiler for the C#. So it is converting this particular thing to program.cs class file to the MSIL. Okay. Now it got converted. If you wanted to see, now that it give me program.exe. See here earlier we did not have only have program.cs, right? So now that this program.exe has been generated, and now this particular exe can be run directly and it can give the output. Okay. So this particular will be executed by the CLR, and when I run this, you get the hello world using the Microsoft.NET Framework. Okay. I hope you're getting these particular points. Like if you want me to prove me how this particular, if it is that particular program.exe is executed by the CLR, I can run through the Visual Studio. I can put a breakpoint here. I said like this particular CLR.dll will be uses the Microsoft core libraries. Okay. So if you want me to put the breakpoint and run this, see how it is having this particular modules loaded. If you can see, if you are getting this window modules window, you can see it is using this particular corp.dll, like a Microsoft core library.dll, which is nothing but the CLR. Okay. If you can, if you this is not visible to you, then go to debug windows and select, and you have something called as modules. Okay, you can select here modules, and once you select the modules over here, you'll see the modules over here in your debugger. So it will show you whichever the applications that are running. So it is running this particular exe file, and it is run by this using this particular Microsoft core lib.dll, which is nothing but the CLR. Okay. When you run this and you continue this, and you can see this particular hello world program has run. Okay. But we are just we have working with the .NET framework. See, if you have written here your C# program and you have given the C# compiler here, and it got converted to the MSIL code, and that MSIL code was taken by the CLR and it converted to the, and it give to the CPU, and CPU got executed with respect to the code that we have written. Okay. If you wanted to check in the PPT also, if you can see, like here is the .NET framework code that we have written. We have used we have written the C# code, and we have used the compiler, and the MSIL code is run by the CLR code, and which CLR it is given the machine language code as well by the CPU. Now let's see write our program in the .NET Core, and let we see how we can use the compiler to. We do not have the we have something called as core CLR, and we hold the core CLR will execute this our code. Okay, let me open the Visual Studio. I'm closing this. I'm creating a new project. This time I'm going to create console application using .NET Core, not .NET Framework. Okay. I will give the name as the project name is Hello World Core. Okay. And I'm going to have the same folder. Okay. Same folder. So I'm targeting 8.0. So our framework is .NET 8.0 latest framework version. Okay, so here is our thing. Like I'm going to open the content folder here. If you can see, I have the bin, the debug, I have the .NET 8.0 folder here because we selected the .NET 6 8.0. If you have selected 6.0, you have the .NET 6 8.0. So I'm going to build this. So once I build it, I'm going to generate all the MSIL code by the compiler. Okay. Because I just wanted to make sure this is understand this particular flow. So what I do is I'll do that manually through the command line interface. So I'm going to delete this bin folder. Okay, I'm opening my command line interface. Command prompt. This is the command prompt by the Visual Studio command prompt. Okay, it is not your system operating system command prompt. This is the Visual Studio command prompt. Developer Visual Studio command prompt. So open the command prompt and change this particular directory. Okay, so I have the command called as the .NET build, which uses the compiler will convert this particular program.cs class file. So before this, I am going to show the whatever the objects we have, the folder. I have the program.cs. So I'm just going to say .NET build. So in this particular thing, .NET build is going to convert the program.cs class to MSIL code. Okay. So if you want me to show that, like dir, so I can see this particular program. So bin folder created. If you can open the bin, then obviously you'll have these particular details. Okay, let me open that one. See, I deleted, but I got generated with respect to the thing. Okay, now I execute this. Okay, I will go and change the directory. I got the bin to be created in this particular folder, so I'm going to change the directory here. Okay, I'm going to say to go and run the hello world code. So I got my hello world to be executed. Okay, if you wanted to write hello world .NET, put a breakpoint here if you wanted. I wanted to show like this. This is used by the .NET Core. So this is it uses the .NET Core CLR to execute this one. So if you can see, if you can go to the debug, I put a breakpoint here. Went to the debug and I put the Windows and I have selected the modules over here, and it is showing this as this system.private.core library.dll, which is nothing but the core CLR, not the CLR. So this is nothing but the core CLR. This is it is using the CLR and it is giving me the output. Okay, when I run this, it got and went and run this particular our core.clr as went and run this particular MSIL code, and it is giving me the correct output. I hope you understand with respect to the debuggers and Windows and check this particular, put the breakpoint. Okay, and go to the debug and Windows and breakpoint. Okay, run this and go to this debug Windows and modules, and you can see this particular core library.dll, nothing but the core CLR. It is using the core CLR to run this particular program. Since with this we are created this particular project in the in .NET Core. Okay, if you wanted to check with respect to the things, like you have something called as console.writeline runtime version. Okay, so when you run this, like you will see what is the, I'm going to debug. Okay, I'm going to run this. So if you can see that the runtime version is 8.0.1.0. So nothing but the 8 version we have seen. Okay. I hope you understand in terms of how do we understand this. Okay, where is the writings? Okay. I hope you understand this, like in terms of the .NET journey, like how we got started with the Microsoft early technologies. Like in terms of 1975, we have only Visual Basic and Visual C Sharp, C++, which is the structural programming, and we have the ASPX active server pages. Like we have the old COM and DCOM, and there is no unified framework. And the aim of these particular earlier technologies was to bring all the developers under one platform. So they developed the .NET framework, which is the unified .NET framework in 2002, and they have this particular VB.NET and C Sharp.NET, which is the objective-oriented programming principles. Like so, we have in this particular latest .NET Core, we have also, along with objective-oriented principles, we have the solid principles also. So which is more friendly with respect to the cloud environments. Okay, so we have the ASP.NET rapid application developments. We have the toolbox, like where we used to drag and drop the controls, but they have the lot of issues in terms of the post back, and they developed something called as .NET Core MVC, which is nothing but the separation of concerns. We overcome all the issues in terms of the .NET earlier ASP.NET. Okay, and web services and WCF are replaced with the web APIs and REST APIs, and we have gone through the example in terms of the programs writing in the .NET framework and its components. We have seen, we just targeted our programming to write to execute the particular program into the CLR, and we also written a sample program into .NET Core, and we made sure the particular program runs the .NET Core CLR. Okay, I hope you understand this. Let me recap everything. I like in terms of all these particular comparisons, whatever we listed, I listed out here like Visual C, C++ has been uh, introduced in 2002 in C Sharp as a object oriented, and we are still following this .NET in the core. We are continuing with the C Sharp with the solid principles also, along with the object oriented principles. So C Sharp got introduced in 2002. We are in the next month. We are entering into the 2025 also. So C Sharp is like very popular and very much having lot of future in terms of the development applications in the C Sharp. Okay, and same as in the VB.NET, like VB.NET is much popular compared to Visual Basic, and now that VB.NET also uses the object-oriented principles along with solid principles. Okay, now we have seen that ASP has been converted to ASP.NET and now ASP.NET Core, and we also called as ASP.NET Core MVC also. Okay, COM, WCF services, web APIs, and REST APIs, and we discussed all this stuff. And here are the brief differences in terms of the earlier technologies: .NET Framework, .NET Core. I hope you understand now it's what is .NET, what is .NET Framework, what is C Sharp .NET, VB.NET, .NET, ASP.NET Core. All this particular terminology must be very familiar with you right now. And you have seen all the differences in terms of all these particular platforms. Okay. In the next session, we'll get into more details in terms of the .NET Core. Now that we understand like earlier technologies, right? Now that we work only with the .NET Core component. So we'll see what is Core CLR, Core FX, which is nothing but the base class libraries like the core framework class libraries. Okay, we'll see JIT compiler like Rio JIT compiler we use. So .NET standards, what is the umbrella terms in .NET component, .NET Core CLI, NuGet package, and garbage color. Okay, now let's get started with now let catch up with the next session. Thank you for watching. Thank you.